pastor of. He has a doctorate from Fuller Theological Seminary as well as a master's, and both of them are related to therapy. And he currently is working with Kaiser Permanente in the Bay Area, and he is very aware of the needs within the Asian population as well as the population in general. He's a really good speaker. He speaks at, you don't have your own podcast, but you do speak on talk shows, and he also has done many types of workshops like this. And so I'm very happy to present to you Dr. Phillip Lowe. And no relationship.
Okay, can you hear me okay? If you can't hear me, raise your hand. No, usually nobody raised their hand that can hear me. So I just want to let you know that I received a lot of thank you even before I start talking about depression and what you can do about it. But I really do want to thank you in return because you guys really saved me on Saturday morning. Okay, can you hear me better now? Yes. Okay, oh, wonderful. So I really want to thank you. Thank you for Pastor Curtis and also Carol for allowing me to be here. The reason is that if I stay home Saturday morning at home, my wife would have a long to-do list for me. So you actually saved me by being here. And this is really good self-care. And I would like to say that if you want me to be here every weekend, I would love to. Okay, so I just wanted to echo a couple of things that I heard this morning with Susanna's great presentation is that by being here, you're actually doing an investment in both yourself and the people you care about around you. I just want to remind one more thing about if you do care about the one question raised from the audience, that if you do care about a family member or parents who have mental illness, do not, the word is do not ever go in there alone, single-handedly. It's probably the most dangerous proposition there is because you will eventually, sooner or later, run into caregiver burnout. It is very real, to a point that you're coming, sobbing, crying to your pastors that, I don't want to do this anymore. And the reason is that I was actually in a mental health clinic for the geriatric population the last 10 years, so I dealt with these issues day in and day out. In any case, is it okay if I take the clicker? Anybody has a clicker? Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, so I want to start out by thinking about the topic of depression and also demystifying depression. So my question is, someone come to you and said, I'm a little depressed. I'm in bad mood. Is this really depression? Okay. When I ask that question, I'm going to start out by actually looking at several scenarios. Can illness, losing job, or bad grades as a Christian can cause depression? Can your religion and spiritual faith give you immunity to depression? How would you answer these questions? So before taunting you and giving you the answer to these questions, so I would like to focus on just adult population and clinical depression. Notice I use the word clinical depression, okay? It's not just good old, I'm feeling a little depressed. So when I start any seminar, I like to kind of give people a scenario that they can work with. So I'm going to present a case to you, okay? This young Asian American, Kevin, he just broke up with his girlfriend. And you tell me if he's depressed, he has clinical depression or not. So he came home really quiet, sad, isolated himself in a room and slept all day, took down his Facebook page. And then he got off next day, and then he went to work. Sorry, the K, W-R-K, got masked out by the smiling Kevin next day. And he was still feeling sad, but he went to work. How many people think he had clinical depression? Okay, no takers. Huh? Okay, so let me present you the next case. Okay, so Karen, notice that all the pseudonym you pick with a K, okay? Nothing magical about that, but Karen gave birth to a boy premature. Finally, she came home from the hospital. She struggled feeding her own baby. Every time feeding baby was so hard. She was crying, sobbing, feeling really guilty about the child being premature. And this went on for weeks. Do you think she had clinical depression? You do? Okay, quite a few people raised their hand. How many people think that she doesn't have clinical depression? Just good old postpartum blue. Okay, thank you for being different. I really appreciate you raising your hand. But before, again, giving an answer, let me present one more case. Kevin is a 54-year-old man who lost his wife, Tamiko, died of cancer recently. And he told you, I can't imagine living alone. He's been sad and tearing most of the day. One day he came to you, he said, well, I have a secret plan to rejoin my wife after life because as Christians, we believe we'll meet each other in an afterlife, in heaven someday. Do you think he had clinical depression? Okay, well, quite a few of you say yes, right? So here's a question I want to present to you first, is that what really constitutes clinical depression? And I want to ask you further in return, how many people that you knew feel like they're having clinical depression? Anybody here that you knew someone? Yeah, I see some hands, okay. How many of you feel like you have clinical depression? Don't raise your hand. This is stigmatizing. Okay. Now that I have given you something to think about, now the first thing I want to be really mindful because my name is Philip, start with P. Punctuality is my first name and middle name. So I want to be punctual. So I want to just keep moving on. But any time you feel like there's a question, feel free to just raise your hand, interrupt me, say, I got to ask this question or I'll forget about it. Okay. Clinical depression is not just feeling down momentarily. What clinical depression does is that it adversely impacts your everyday life functioning. And functioning meaning that either not doing well in school or not relating well with people or not able to perform at your job like you used to. And it's also marked by something we often need to judge by. It's the duration of depression, the severity and the number of symptoms really do matter, what one has depression or not. Is that clear? All right, so let's break it down a little bit more, okay? So according to the Bible of mental illness, called the DSM-5, the way that they classify clinical depression is the following. You have to have the following sign. Somehow I was trying to animate so the bottom doesn't show up. So pretend, okay? There's only the top part that shows up right now. Pretend, okay? All right, so you have to be feeling depressed, meaning your mood is down. You're feeling sad, teary. There's a lot of fatigue. Whether you have slept for 12, 18 hours or not, you're still feeling pretty tired. Appetite change, sleep disturbance, meaning that you're either sleeping too much or not sleeping at all, hyposomnia or hypersomnia. So I know that a lot of you are getting a little tense now. I just want to inject a little story I heard. So one time a pastor told me this story. He said a brother came to him one day during service, and he kind of disclosed to the pastor what happened to him. Apparently, he had had insomnia for many decades. And in his word, it's like the hypersomnia, meaning this is that at night, he's feeling like he's really like not sleeping. Mind is really vivid and thoughts just racing and going on all the time. Have you guys had that kind of sleepless night once in a while? Yeah, okay. You know what I'm talking about. So this been going on for about 3 decades. So because of the hypersomnia and then the depression, he stopped going to church. So one day he was taking his kind of morning walk, he can't sleep, and he went by church, such a Lord's Grace church, but he heard the hymn playing in the background. He decided to come in and check out the church, and he stayed throughout the whole service. At the end of the service, he went up and gave the pastor a big hug. He said, thank you, that was the best sermon I ever heard. He said, I've been having insomnia for many decades. As soon as you spoke, I slept so well. No implication to Pastor Curtis' third sermon or Pastor Brian. Okay, so I do that from time to time. People come in and say, I slept really well after you spoke to us. So anyway, so clinical depression, okay, at the above symptom, there are probably more than these symptoms, including like social isolation and feeling very irritable when somebody gives you some snarky remark that usually can tolerate. But during time of clinical depression, you're going from a rage from 0 to 100, almost in a split of a second, things like that. And sometimes people are feeling like the people who are depressed usually just isolate themselves, don't speak, and silent. It's really not quite that. There's a lot of different pictures with that. Now, clinical depression, they are rated in terms of severity from mild, moderate to severe. And with the severe cases, people tend to almost simultaneously present themselves with suicidal thought, sometimes engage with self-harm, with plans and means. And in order for something to classify clinical depression, it has to be 2 weeks or more. And then you have to have at least 5 symptoms. All right. Having said that, let's go back. Kevin, based on the criteria we just laid out in front of you, how many people think that Kevin met the criteria of a DSM-5 diagnosis? Do you see 5 symptoms? You don't see 5 symptoms. Did it persist over 2 weeks? All right. You guys are great. You're 100% right. You could be a doctor now. All right. See, that is not easy. My job is really easy. I just go down to this list and guess what? Yeah, Kevin really doesn't fit that traditional what we call clinical depression because a lot of us have gone through broken relationships before. But that doesn't necessarily mean that a broken relationship, a divorce, or someone dying in your family would automatically diagnosable as clinically depressed. Fair? All right. Karen, what do you think? Do you think Karen has clinical depression? Okay, let's give a raise of hand. How many people think she has clinical depression? Okay. Can you keep your hands up because I want to see who I might be able to pick on. Put you on the spot. You look pretty brave. The one that raised a hand in the back just now. Yeah, I think so. Did you raise your hand, or were you just scratching your head? Okay. Okay, why?
Because it lasts for weeks.
Okay, very good. It lasts for weeks, right? Did it adversely impact her functioning? It does, right? In what way? She struggled feeding her child, right? Feeling really guilty. Does she have more than 5 symptoms? Yes, she does, right? And some of which you probably didn't see. Struggle feeding her baby, sad, depressed, guilty, and went on for probably isolations and don't want to speak to other people. There are a lot of issues that. Now, I'm actually speaking of postpartum depression here, okay? So that is clinical depression. Okay, what about Calvin? Do you think he has clinical depression based on the criteria? Yes? Okay. The gentleman back there, you look like someone really sober and really alert this morning. Can I pick on you? Okay, so what do you see that makes her clinically depressed? Self-harm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's at least 3. Probably more than that, right? And in order for someone to be in such a degree of grief talking about feeling sad, isolated, like people don't understand him, he actually withhold telling the plan after a long time, but once he develop some trust. So I know that a lot of you probably know someone who's depressed. And if I were to push that issue further, can Christian be depressed? It can be depressed. What are some of the biblical characters that are diagnosable as clinical depression? Can you think of one? Elijah. Did someone say Job? I know. Job was terribly depressed. Elijah. And tell me more. There are prophets among the Old Testament who are depressed. Jeremiah, very depressed. Homeland was, ransacked. And I was thinking about the guy that got swallowed by the fish. Jonah. Okay, yeah. Okay, anyone else? What about David? David was in deep mourning when he lost his child. What about people in the book of Psalms, 150 Psalms? How many of the Psalms are actually people who are in deep mourning? Quite a lot. Those who are, really good Sunday school teacher, if you go back and really count the number of people who are depressed in those Psalms, there are a lot of them. Unfortunately, though, back in the Old Testament day, we didn't have the term clinical depression, but they exist. Fair? Okay. Now I've spoken to your heart, so let's go on. Now, the question then, what caused depression? Anybody can think of reason why what can cause depression? Okay, let's go into some of them, all right? Now, when we say clinical depression, there is really no single reason that is the main contributor for a clinical depression. So let me walk you back those cases let me talk about Karen for a moment. Okay, Karen clearly suffered from postpartum depression. Why do you think she suffered from that? What reason would make her depressed? Hormonal changes, right? I see some of, okay, very, very true. What else? What other reason can make her depressed? Is hormonal imbalance the only reason? What about her son being premature? She felt like she probably did something wrong during her pregnancy, right? What about family pressure? Responsibility, a sense of guilt. So I want to start out is that medically what makes us depressed is the following. Within our body, there's these things called hormone, or better known as neurotransmitter. The two neurotransmitters have been identified as what we call feel-good chemicals. These feel-good chemicals what keep us alive and well and wanted to do things. Want to come to Sunday for Sunday sermons and then attend Sunday school, interact with your pastor instead of sending secret emails and say, your sermon really sucks this morning, and if you do that again, I'm not coming back to your church. And so mood stabilizer, the two of them, serotonin and norepinephrine, those are the two main chemicals that keep us what we call feel good. Now, the problem, though, is that we cannot identify neurochemical and hormone as the only reason that make us depressed. Such as the case when Karen, the reason she got depressed is not just postpartum hormonal imbalance, is that there are other social factors that make her depressed. Isn't that true? So let me talk about some of the possible causes. Very firstly is that some of us might be because of our physiological state, we might have a chemical imbalance, brain misregulate, okay? And there are also those people who are born in a depressed family. What about the children of alcoholism and dysfunctions and traumas, right? And some of which are genetic vulnerability, meaning that we actually do identical twin study, and we see that if in the family, one identical twin is depressed, the genetic linkage to the other sibling is so much higher. Now that's a proof of genetic vulnerability. And then also the medication or medical condition issues that make you depressed. For example, Suzanne was pointing out about parents who have dementia. They are ready to be transferred to some kind of assisted living or some kind of high-level care, right? And parents are fearful. They don't know what to do. And we see a lot of people who early sets of dementia, Alzheimer's, became depressed, okay? And medical issue, and then as well as stressful life events. I'm sure in Silicon Valley, nobody has stress. Okay, all right, you laugh. You know what I'm talking about. Are there stresses in your life? A lot, no doubt. When I walk in here this morning, I was jokingly saying that you saved me, but there was one concern that I had this morning. I bought an electric car for environmental reason. When I came here, I realized that last night I forgot to charge my car. So it was like 100 miles left, and I have to commute all the way from East Bay, back of Oakland, all the way here, and I'm not going to make it home. So I need to find a charging station. Guess what? That's stress, right? And as I was thinking about how to get home, I was trying to be engaging and giving you, value for your investment this morning. In the back of my mind, how do I get home? How do I charge my car? That's going on, lurking in the background. So anyway, stressful life event. All right. Let's talk about something that's a little bit, in all seriousness, that new mothers, about 50 to 80% of them experience some kind of mild form of postpartum depression, as is in the case of Karen. And 50% of the women who have postpartum depression will relapse when you have your second child. It is that high. Now, what about genetic reason? Having depressed parent increase your risk? Family issues, financial risk, jobs, marriage, family discord. How many of you, your heart sunk when you heard about the coronavirus and then the stock market dropped by 12% and there goes your 401k? Life stress. And in China, you know how many households who in the Hunan province and also in Hubei, they're being locked down for days and weeks. They're only allowed to get grocery once a week for the whole family. Now, there was a study done. Somebody actually took a note of people allowed to go out to buy grocery for the whole family. They're cutting down their meals now, only eating 2 instant noodle per day. And with 4 in their family, that means they need to eat 8 packs of instant noodle, multiplied by 8 packs, multiplied 7 days. That's just instant noodle alone, and only one person allowed to carry all that, and you're not allowed to drive. Imagine the amount of groceries you need to bring back, and you can't live on instant noodle alone, right? And also rely on the Word of God. But the thing is that you need vegetable, you need balanced diet, and all that stuff. Yeah, all right, fair. Now you know the amount of stress that people in China are experiencing is unprecedented. Okay, other risk factors. Lose a loved one. And Susanna pointing out this morning that when you care for seniors, right, one thing that senior encounters that they're experiencing more and more losses as every day goes by. Just because you live longer, your probability of having someone being gone before you is so much higher. And we heard of people having cancer when they're 40 and 50, sarcoma cancer, lung cancers, and lymph node and all that stuff, right? So knowing that other risk factor, including loss of loved one, you have social isolation and experience of rejection, all these things combine and can make you depressed. What we find the prevalence in younger kids is that we're having children who are depressed earlier and earlier and longer. And then those of you who live in Palo Alto, which we're not too far from, you know, in 2017, several kids, from well-to-do families and academically excellent kids, they walk off the Amtrak train track and just take their life. Stress, do that to you. So let's talk real quick about onset, and then I think the fun part that we do here will be question and answer sessions, okay? Shall we do more of that? Okay, so let me talk a little about statistic and what are the risk factors, right? So average onset of depression usually starts about mid-20s, and about 10 to 25% of our women in our midst will get depression one time in their life. So let's take this audience right here, all right? Let's take this audience. If I were to split this audience down middle by, I'm going to split Susanna in half, okay? She's in half now. So we have one group here, and so 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So our audience here, this group of people here would experience clinical depression once in a lifetime. That is that high. Okay, women are 2x more likely to be depressed than men. We don't know exactly why, but genetically, lady and you are more susceptible to Alzheimer's, clinical depression. Now, at the same time, unfortunately though, lady, you're also showing a much higher level of prevalence for Alzheimer's and dementia. And you wonder why, right? How does depression and also dementia, Alzheimer's, may lead to that? Here's the trick, right? Women live longer than men. There's no argue about it, okay? The fact that you live longer, that means that you have higher chances to live into old age. And Alzheimer's is one of these diseases where your body kind of outlives your brain, all right? So guess what, guys? We don't need to depress. Praise the Lord. We're actually less susceptible to Alzheimer's. All right. Hey guys, we need to have one of these morning club. I often say, as Asians, right, we don't really express our emotions, and my dad is one of those stoic men, and the only thing he does is cooking is a way for him to prove his own worth. I remember one time he started having a lot of physical ailment. He's at 94 now. The only reason he retired was because he drove down San Gabriel Valley in Southern California on a right turn. Little did he know, he thought that the lane was clear. He ran down the pedestrian, and it was right in front of him. This young lady flew 10 feet. And he didn't realize that over the year, he started developing a glaucoma and also a cataract. And glaucoma is one of those things where you lose your peripheral vision, so he didn't see that, oncoming traffic, so he kind of ran down that person. But my dad is one of those person that he doesn't really share his emotion, like a typical Asian man. And the only thing he does is acts of service. So I didn't mean to take the thunder away from Susanna because you did such a great job in presenting. But for those parents who do not communicate, they're not verbally affectionate, you might go through them with acts of services that might speak well to them. Like she was doing act of service by inviting her mom to do, fold her clothes, right? So my dad is one of those people. One day I came home, and he asked me, it was late in the afternoon, like 2 or 3. He said, "Have I eaten?" I said, "Yeah, of course, 2 or 3. Anyone would have eaten at lunch." So he brought some bowl of rice and some food, said, "Eat some more." And then guess what? He gave me a bowl of soup, Chinese-made soup, really pristine because, it's light yellow. It's so pristine, and there's no other substance to it. But there I looked at the bowl. At the bottom of the bowl, guess what? There was a fly. Man, that was the toughest decision I have to make. Do I drink it or do I not drink it? Well, if you ever invite me back, I'll give you the answer. I'll give you what I did with it. Okay. Did I say grace? I did. I that was the longest, grace I ever did in my life. I said, "Lord, lead me from temptation and lead me not into evil." So, all right. Having said that, in all, lightheartedness, let's talk about depression and what you can do about it, okay? So depression, as I mentioned before, their severity range from mild, moderate, and severe. And how do you know someone that has mild, moderate, to severe level of depression? You're interested to know. One of the most well-known way to do that, and it's clinical proven, is by using an assessment tool, right? In order for you to be diagnosed, you need to assess someone. That their assessment tool is called a PHQ-9, and originally it was like PHQ-45, but it's condensed down to just 9 questions, PHQ-9. And if you ended up with a score of between 5 to 9, you're mildly depressed, meaning that you have 5 symptoms. It persisted over 2 weeks. But the level in which it affects you is the following, that well, I don't really feel like going to work feels kind of boring or not interesting, but I'll do it anyway. You get up, still you make it to work. But when you come home driving on a freeway, you feel a little bit more tired. You no longer be able to perform at 100%, maybe 75. So score of 5 to 9 is mild. Moderately depressed is from score of 10 to 19, and recognizing that from 10 to 19, there's a 9-point spread, okay, those who are good with math. So from 10 to 14, meaning you're low, moderate range of depression. And then when you're 15 and above, it's moderately high degree of depression. The reason this is important, it will dictate the way in which we deal with how to treat clinical depression. So, okay, so you know the score now. 5 to 9, 10 to 19, and 20 plus is severely depressed, okay? And how do you treat depression? How many of you here actually know someone that takes antidepressants? Can I see a show of hands? Oh, quite a few. So more than half the audience, okay? So let me talk about how to treat depression, and then what they call clinically proven way that have shown high degree of efficacy. At Kaiser, at least I can speak for myself, okay? When your scores range from 5 to about 14, meaning mildly depressed or low, moderately depressed, we only recommend therapy. Therapy meaning lifestyle changes, more adaptive thoughts, problem-solving skills, or removing stressor from your life. This is what we call therapy, okay? Now, the duration of clinical depression in that range can last anywhere from days to weeks in order for you to recover from depression. Now, I apologize. For some reason, the next piece of animation kind of got blanked out. Can I ask for some help there? Can you escape the full screen mode and then see if I could just display that slide alone with the bottom part? While we're waiting for technical resolution, let me explain. From a score from 15 all the way to 27, that is severe depression and something we need to really be extremely cautious. At that point, behavioral therapy alone usually don't cut it. The reason is that someone can be so severely depressed that they can't even get out of the house. I remember when I was an intern, when I was in the Fuller Seminary, I visited a Hispanic lady in her home. We knocked on her door. The social worker told us that she's, ready for our visit. She knows we're coming and all that stuff, right? So there's no denial that she knows we're coming. But we waited at the door, knocked on the door, almost at the end, pounding at the door. She would not open the door. Finally, we waited a long time and took a few phone calls. She finally allowed us to go in. We went into this room that I would never have imagined what it looked like from the outside. It's pitch black, trash all over the house. There are crumbs left on the table. She haven't seen a human being for weeks, and her room was like a hoarding ground. And I thought I had spotted some cockroach running in her room. And she lived like though she had not seen day of life. Now, if you look at that, I would say she is severely depressed, isolate herself for weeks, if not months. Can you see that slide okay in the bottom part here? Apologize for my animation didn't quite work right. When someone is rated at 15 plus, medication, meaning a class of antidepressant or possibly some kind of anti-anxiolytic or what we call anti-anxiety medication are very important, okay? Got it so far? I just want to break it down in a simple way. Now, in order to treat someone with 15 plus score, it could take weeks or months to treat, if not years. And some people never end up recovering completely to the normal range, but they can maintain the symptom down to a functional range, maybe in a mildly depressed range, and never fully cure from the condition. Okay, can we go back to the full screen mode? Is that from just the slideshow from current slide? So I could get some water while I'm waiting. I feel a little sore back. Anybody good in massages? Okay. I'm just tempting the audience here. Because I don't know what slide I have next, and I do want to be mindful of giving some question-answer time. Can you press 15, enter, 15, enter. The numeric key, 15, and enter. That's my shortcut, jumping to a particular slide. Okay. How we doing? Okay, great, perfect. Thank you. I think we're good. Now, instead of talking about the detailed treatment, I think the most important thing is talking about how to prevent depression. Isn't it true? Intervention is never good as prevention. So I want to give you some encouragement as well as some biblical references as far as what the Bible has to say about preventing clinical depression. Okay, how to prevent depression is the following. If you maintain a healthy lifestyle, meaning this, is that you have proper amount of sleep, getting enough rest, physical exercise, and nutrition, that almost always prevent you from falling into depression. So let me quote a well-known verse from the Bible. And a lot of you remember the Psalm 23. And here's what it says. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. I want you to focus on the two words here, green pasture and water. If you're looking at from a sheep's perspective, what does a sheep need? Food, food, and also rest. Now, what kind of food does a sheep need? Green pasture and quiet water, right? A sheep would never drink from a turbulent water, by the way, if I want to let you know. And they usually don't like to go onto brown grass and eat those, withered grass. Now, to me, that's healthy lifestyle. You would never seen a sheep come up to you and said, I'm kind of bored of the green pasture and the quiet water. I want some steak and lobster and Jen barbecue. Guess what that do to a sheep? Fair enough. So I have a lot of teenagers, sometimes teenage parents come to me and said, my son is in marijuana. And then I have a hard time convincing the son or the youngster that maybe marijuana is not so good. And she had a hard time justifying because marijuana is legal. What's wrong by putting something legal in your body? So we're reminded in 1 Corinthians chapter, 11, it said, we can do all things. But not all things are what? Beneficial for you, right? Now, the fact that you can engage in some activity or do something that is legal doesn't mean it's healthy or good for you. Now, I want to use an analogy from Psalm 23, is that if we put stuff into our body and do things that are outside the healthy realm that God have allotted for us, we are in trouble. In other words, when God created us, He probably, Susanna had reminded us about rest, right, on the Sabbath day. That's proper sleep and rest. No. And then physical exercise and nutrition. If you faithfully and do all these three things, you can really guard yourself against depression. And I want to say this unabashedly in front of you, that this is what I told all my patients. In fact, when my patients come in, when they've been depressed before, I gave them an acronym of SAM, S-A-M, right? SAM, S, you'll guess what it is? What is S? Sleep. And A, activity, right? And M is for your meal, SAM. And if you do that, and in fact, I made a point talking to my patients that I hope that when I see you, I don't want to see you ever again. And because I do make the point of talking about preventing from falling into another episode of mental illness. Okay, if you buy into this, okay, so let me talk about the other part. Now, in order for people to prevent themselves from depression, just engaging on those three items, it's not a bulletproof idea. The reason is that we also need to be built with resiliency, problem-solving skills, and having positive attitude. No wonder when you read Psalms, right, a lot of verses are talking about, I get up fresh in the morning. I stop giving praises to the Lord. I engage in what they call gratitude and thanksgiving. And studies have shown more and more that if you engage in a positive attitude and always think about Thanksgiving, you live happier, and then you have less cortisol, and then ended up the feel-good chemical are secreted on a higher volume. And sciences have been coming and reconciling with the scripture in such a unmistaken way. I want to just encourage you that really reading the scripture and really helps us. So remember the green pasture and the quiet water. And the last thing I want to mention is socialization. There was a huge study across the globe, countries and different ethnicities. They want to ask a question. They want to answer a question. What makes people healthy and happy? And you know what they found? So let me ask you first. What makes people healthy? We already talked. I already gave you the answer. What makes people healthy? I want to hear from here. Oh, Sam, right? Sam, physical exercise, right? And then your appetite, and then your meals and activity, right? But they were wrong. They found out that SAM is actually not the biggest protective factor that makes us well. What makes us well is socializing. Turns out that having social support, spiritual community that come and pray for you, and these people come and care for you, and that is the biggest protective factor for us to be well. I'm not talking depression now, okay? So you see that I'm actually elevating a little higher and higher. We're talking about having a healthy life and a fulfilled, rewarding life is that we need to have socialization. And I have 15 minutes left. Is that what it says? 15.5. Okay, so let me just dwell on this, and then we're going to question and answer. This is something I'm fearful about for our brothers in our midst. See, women tend to be pack animals. What they do is that they go to a restroom together. They have their socialization. Hey, I want to tell you about my husband. He was awfully disgusting last night. He didn't wash his underwear for weeks, and he's just flipping them and reusing. Okay, I don't want to get into too much of that. All right, okay, power up. Right? Women would tend to go into the bathroom and talk about their husband. And then you know what men do? If you ask another brother, hey, shall we go into my office, the restroom, and let's chat? The guy will look at you kind of weirdly. You're a weirdo. Then guess what? Men tend to be, independent creatures. And I think the problem is that somehow within our hormones and our genes, right, the way that God designed us in the beginning, we tend to be problem solvers based on physical strength and independent thinking and rational thinking. Unfortunately, in this day and age, men are more vulnerable to social isolation than ever before. If you look at the number of gamers online in cyberspace, they are predominantly boys and men. And what does that mean? It means that guys, we're less socializing now. And we don't want to be, people get into our business. We want to do more online activities. And guess what? We're also susceptible to, social, cyber events such as pornographies and then things of that sort, right? So having socialization is such an important thing. And in fact, I make a point talking to parents to try to watch out for boys' issue because this is what's happening now. Today, as I'm speaking, the college admission rate, women far exceeds men. We're talking about 55% to 45%. What's even more scary is that the graduation rate among men are even lower. And how many ladies in campus actually talk about not being able to find a suitable man to date? On top of that, 3/4 of the African-American household grew up without a father. So this is another topic that's really dear to my heart, but how it ties into the topic we're talking about, clinical depression, is that even though in as much women are more susceptible to clinical depression, men suffer from other kinds of unhealthy lifestyle. And that's the socialization part. And I really, thankful for the church community and also thankful for people who care for one another. And I want to say that connectedness is an issue that is making men very vulnerable these days. We want to come here not just say, hey, how you doing? How's your car running? And can I get a better deal on, buying the next electric car? And we just want to come here and then, hey, say, what has been bothering you lately? And how can I pray for you? Really in a sincere and non-hypocritical way. When I pray for certain people, I say, some people I might offer to pray for them. I try not to take it home. I usually try to pray for them at the spot and try to do it here and now and try to engage that, sincere encounter. And the thing that we don't want to do as church community is a superficial encounter that we're just here to say hi and bye. Having said that, I just want to mention a couple of quick things, and I'll go to Q&A. Medication. I know that a lot of you raised your hand. I just wanted you to be aware of medication effects is that when you're severely depressed, you tend to be prescribed in certain classes of medication. The very first class of medication is called a tricyclic. These are what we call ancient and more obsolete medications. The tricyclic, they tend to have a lot of side effects. If you look at the list I'm listing here, amitriptyline and things that you cannot recognize, it's just because they're less and less prescribed. But they still do exist because they're prescribed when typical medication, typical antidepressants do not work, which is the next category. The more commonly prescribed antidepressant now is called the SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. They come in the form of Celexa, Lexapro, Prozac, Zoloft, and Praxil. You probably recognize some of these names. The reason they are more popular now because they present a lot less side effect. for example, suicidal thought and heart palpitations and dry mouth and all those effects. And also they cause less fatigue. But that's not to say that they don't have side effects. Any type of pharmaceutical product, because they're synthetically made, they all present with side effects. The point to decide whether it's worth taking antidepressant or not is usually following. Do they present more benefit or they present more harm to you or side effect? That's the question. It's not whether they work or not. Most of them actually do work to some degree. It's benefit versus cost. Fair enough? So I just want to present you with these two ideas. And then the most important thing about the SAM, sleep, appetites, and also meal, activity and meals, right? What we found is that over the past decade, there's several ingredients in our food tend to be very helpful. For kids with ADHD, omega-3 fatty acids seem to be helping a lot to a degree that you don't even need pharmaceutical medication like Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, Strattera, that kind of thing. Omega-3, having sufficient B vitamin, vitamin D, and tryptophan, all those are key ingredients that make us well. Have a balanced diet, and that can only be done with you eating something less red meat, more vegetable, and all that. Okay, having said that, I'm not going to go into the next creative idea because I learned that from someone. We already talked about most of them. So I want to end here, giving folks have enough time to go into Q&A. So thank you for your undivided attention. And now I want to entertain question and answer. So I have approximately 9 minutes, right? Okay. Any question after I have bombarded you with a lot of information?
Rise. Oh, thank you. And on the rise. So, like specifically in this Bay Area, how would you approach specifically that age group, the young professionals, college students, because of the socio-economic area that they live in, and that they're more prone to that? Like, is there anything different you would do specifically to this area?
So that's
to approach
that's a fantastic question. I really thought that you have thoughtfully asked that question. But I want to ask you in return, what perspective are you looking from? Are you looking from a perspective of pastoral ministry? You're looking at from a mental health perspective? You're looking from employee point of view? Or you're looking from a family perspective? That is asked intentionally, by the way.
Yes, that's a good point. I guess it's from being a Christian. Yeah, it is from the root is from that perspective.
Okay.
But I also want to figure out how do you treat holistically, because at the end of the day, we're spirit, soul, and body. We have to consider. I feel like a lot of times churches kind of over spiritualize things, and so it's really from the spiritual front, but it's really also.
Okay, so I just want to say that I really do appreciate that question because it's get at the core about Christian belief, right? Now, let me answer kind of indirectly. I think, given that we're in such a performance-driven environment here in the Silicon Valley, we're all susceptible to that. At Kaiser, you know what they do to us? Every hour we're being measured by my patient recovery rate, by how effectively I use my time. If a patient no-show, it negatively impacts us. Performance metrics is everywhere. Let's come to grip with that. So in light of that, we really want to be serious about what the Bible is saying, right? What is a green pasture and what is the quiet water? Now, that's going to play out differently in every person's life. Is that fair? Meaning that, for example, we need to come to reevaluate such as, am I at a stage that I am spending most of my focus and energy raising young kids? Or is my focus currently with dating and learning how to balance work life and then dating and all that? Fair enough? So there are different challenges with different stages of life. Now, so from a Christian perspective, I think that gives us more awareness that let's not be so performance-driven first at church environment. Shall we? Let's not measure ourselves by what kind of car that person drives and what kind of, how much that person had made since he graduated from UC Berkeley versus Stanford or Cal State or whatnot. We need to be really mindful that we don't evaluate our uniqueness and our personal worth by that. And that's go without saying. And the second thing would be engaging with these youngsters with things that are more interested with, for example, at this young age, right? What they care about is to, establish finding a soulmate, how they can, start out a family and all that. That would be their challenges, right? Now, churches should be particularly more sensitive to family, for example, young family who have kids. I don't know how many times I've seen young parents come to church. They feel like they just don't belong. They feel so exhausted because simply they're switching a place to babysit. And guess church leader would also put burden on them and say, you guys should be serving now because God has blessed you with, great children. They look awesome. And then, you know what? You got to serve, And I took offense in those kind of comments because that's not what they need right now. They really need to be supported with parental resources, how to be better parent, how do they take rest when they can, how can they spread the load, finding resources such as church will offer date night, and just let them go off and have a good time caring for their marriages, enhance their mind-body health, things of that sort. I know that I'm not only give you kind of anecdotal, kind of overall perspective, but I think I know what you're getting at. Stress is everywhere, and we need to be doing differently than the rest of the world. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for asking that question. Can I think she raised her hand 1 millisecond before you. Okay.
Sure, that was quick. Okay. To piggyback off of his question, so my husband and I work with youth in the church. So this is a pastoral perspective. And we're in Cupertino School District. So we have a lot of kids who struggle with performance, but we notice their earbuds are always in their ears and hardly sometimes eye contact, or they're depressed. The minute we talk to them, they start tearing up, and it has a lot to do with the SAT, ACT, all that stuff, and colleges and so forth. And we go and approach parents, and they're like, what? My kid? Like, everybody's kid's like that. How do we begin conversations with parents regarding adolescent depression? Are we seeing signs during small groups and so forth in their activities, and their kids are not doing well?
Wow, that was such a important question. I want to congratulate you first, though. If youngsters are willing to share these burdens in their heart, you are doing a fabulous job. They trust you, and they don't trust their parents. This is the digital divide that we have in our age, right? Parents have a different mindset. When they come to church, if they're willing to spill the gut, go with it, and really validate them and give them as much support and love as you can, and try to understand exactly what they're dealing with, and then try to involve the parents. Try to involve the parents. Say, this is what. Ask the kids first. Are you okay if I approach your parent on this topic on your behalf? It seems like you may have some struggle talking about this topic. Some kids really do. They don't want to bring up this topic. They want to act like the Marvel hero, an incredible Hulk in front of their parents, right? Inside they're like little pony. Now, really continue to build that trust, and then see if they're willing to allow you to take this to the next step. Have a conversation with the parent, and then encourage them that God would see you uniquely in your own worth. You're not being evaluated just by your SAT. Your own worth is not how much score you make in ACT. For say Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, They didn't graduate from college. Man, they did really well. So my goal is that Cupertino's school district is not the end-all be-all, first of all, and help them to explore interests and be who they are, allow them to pursue the passion. That's the way I would go about approaching it. But I thank you for doing such a fabulous job. They're willing to come to you and spill the gut. 40 seconds, is that
one more question?
One more question? Okay. Okay, great. One more question. Oh, yes, in the back.
I have a question. It's more from a parent's perspective. So what do you recommend for parents that we can do? What real things that we can do to help that connectivity?
Okay.
Especially in this age where a lot of times we may have the desire, but we're competing with the culture.
Absolutely.
Like I have 3 boys, and they tell me that gaming is actually social. And I'm like, really? So I don't know if it's a culture. So how do you cross that? Yeah, and I do.
Wow.
I share your concerns about this because I went to a couple college things, and I'm shocked because whenever I go, there are all these girls. It's like the rate is like 60. It's actually a higher ratio. I feel like when I visit these colleges, it's like 60+% of the people that are in the room are being admitted as girls, but actually the ones that are actually attending the college meeting are all girls, and me and my one son.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, this is horrible.
Wow, he has plenty of choices then. Maybe I should send my son to your school. Okay.
It's great for him.
I apologize if I go over, but I think this is an important question to answer. You are dealing with a tidal wave of social isolation in boys. And statistics are stacking against guys now. You see more and more top company CEO all run by women now. I have nothing against that, but when they're all run by women, then we have a problem because we're the men, right? Here's the thing. We need to, if you have any young boys in your family, first, you really need to start early by helping your kids to diversify. Don't let them get into a digital screen too early. A lot of parents ask me, when is it appropriate to give them an iPhone or a smartphone? There's no fixed answer to that. It really depends on their maturity. The more mature they are, the earlier you can give them that device. All I'm saying is that for boys that are young or girls that are young, don't leave them alone with screen time. Don't use iPad and video game as babysitting tool. Diversify them, help them get into sports, music programs, and college marching bands and whatnot. Did you know that video gaming, which country has the worst video gaming habit? South Korea. And Asia is a big problem. Now, in America and also in Europe, this problem actually less. The reason is that we're blessed with this open environment. We have stadiums and soccer fields everywhere. Let's make good use of that. And however, parents need to model for the kids, right? Meaning on your dinner table. Don't get tempted pulling out, say, oh, I got to answer this text. You know what your kids learn from that? They say, oh, yeah, mom answered the text. I need to do that too. And we really, really resist using electronic devices on our dinner table. You know, one thing that we really save us is that we used to have Sunday devotion time with my kids, but we don't do a traditional way. You sit down and read your scripture. Read it loudly. I'm going to kick your butt. We don't do that. We actually, Sunday devotion to us is that we play games. We come to eat some good snacks. And then we play some game, and then we talk about what we learned from Sunday worship that night. We do something that's fun, engaging, and also they have saying over it. Diversify their lifestyle. Don't leave that digital device become the babysitting tool. Start that early. And even if it's now, it's still not too late because they still need to follow you, and they're on your financial mercy, right? And money is one way to do that token economy, making them engaged, right? Used to be that my son always call me or text me only when he's running low on funds. But I took that opportunity to talk to him, hey, where are you low on funds? And whenever my son calls, right, I made it my priority to answer his call. Unless I'm with a patient or acute, I would text him, can I call you back in such a... I always make interacting with him as my number one priority. You see, when you make him the priority, they learn to reciprocate. It's when you inadvertently, implicitly looking at your cell phone and not paying attention and deprioritizing them, they learn that from you to disengage. Now, I have an entire talk on this very topic alone. I don't want to just give you a haphazard answer, but I'm hoping that I could get a chance to speak on that topic a little bit more. I just gave a NAMI talk 2 weeks ago, and there were packed full of audience, parents who really want to solve this problem. It is a tidal wave we're dealing with. It is a crisis, and if we don't do something about early on, we're going to be reaping a consequence from that. Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for that response and engagement, and God bless you all. And if I can be of help in the future, I'm available Saturday morning.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for coming. There's one note, which is we have our friends from NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness outside. They have a resource booth for you. And they have a special branch called FaithNet that is particularly made to engage with churches and help churches with support groups and training and things like that. So please go talk to them. They're here. And otherwise, leave your feedback forms. Take some time to fill that out. The baskets are right here in the room. And leave your name badges as you go. Thanks so much for coming. And we'll hope to hear from you and do other events in the future. Thanks.